The Maroon White Pod brought to you by CityLink. For bookings, timetables, updates and any other information, head to citylink.ie. Welcome along to the Maroon White Pod. Yesterday, the news obviously emerged that sadly John O'Mahony has passed away. What he did for Galway football was just remarkable in 98 and 2001 and had great success with Mayo, and even what he did with Leitrim was just remarkable. John was actually on the podcast twice throughout the year this year, and I always enjoyed his insight and his conversations to have him on. And I'm delighted to be joined by Seán O'Dupere. He obviously would have played under John O'Mahony, and Finian Hanley as well, who worked with John O'Mahony with Sota Knocknacara in the last 2 years as well. Finian, coming to you first, obviously you would have worked close with Jono. Just a lot of sadness over the last 24 hours.
Yeah. Paul, to be honest, yeah, I think it's a shock to not only Galway people and Mayo people, but I think nationwide. I think it's you saw all the tributes yesterday, Crow Park and RTE and all over, and I think far and wide in the GA world, everyone knew John O'Mahony, knew what he had achieved in his career and his insight and his overall intellect when it came to all matters football. And I think, massive shock yesterday. I know we had a league final on Saturday evening, and when I woke yesterday, I had a couple of missed calls off his wife, and the news just wasn't good, I suppose. But a massive legacy left behind, a brilliant legacy of just one of the greatest sporting managers, I'd say, of the country has ever seen. So privileged to have worked with him in the last 2 years with Salt Hill. Got to know him really, really well. I'd known him 20 years ago, but I suppose not as well as when you're talking to him every day or twice a day in some occasions. And obviously Seán will be able to, the bonds that they had in the greatest, one of the greatest parts of Galway GA history was in between 98 and 2001, and John O'Mahony was a huge part of it.
Yeah, Seán, he was obviously very special to you as a group of players when you see the success he achieved.
Yeah, he was. He was manager for 7 years, from we'll say the winter of 1997, we'll say, but really 98 until 2004. So, you get to know somebody more than Finian there when you're in constant contact with them. Now, the nature of the relationship back then would have been, player manager. So, John being the consummate professional, there's always a small little bit of the school teacher pupil relationship when it comes to players and managers. But we'd say over the last 20 years, and I'm sure I speak for a lot of the lads that played under him, got to know him in a different way. But as Finian said there, I suppose the overriding thought, for me over the last 24 hours is what a gentleman he was. He had time for everybody. He was interested in your life. He was interested in your family's life. And he like he was one of the obviously the most successful managers in Connacht in Ireland, right? But and you have to have a certain ruthlessness to be that person. But I don't think I've ever met anybody that fell out with him. Sure, he had disagreements, but he just had this wonderful capacity to get on with everybody. And I suppose, no more than all teams, you have your messaging groups. And when the news broke yesterday morning, the lads that played under him in '98 were, they were just gutted. Some of the messages, I'm sure they don't mind me saying this, but the words that came up in the group were, things like been gutted, been heartbroken, forever indebted, a man of high standards, so we owe him so much for, I suppose, a very special time in our lives.
Yeah, there was a time
So
there was a time when he was in hospital, and obviously I wasn't aware of it, and I was talking to him, and he obviously said he wasn't available to do it, but he was already talking about coming on to do a preview for the semi-final. That just showed John O'Mahony in a nutshell, Finian. He was just always willing to talk about football.
He was, yeah, he was. He was an incredible character, incredible person, really, and like his attention to detail, as Sean Oak mentioned there, but his interest. I suppose he's been involved in so many different teams, and over the last couple of years, I suppose prior to his stays in Salta and Knocknacarra, he was involved as an advisor in different counties and different clubs, and I'd only realised the amount of clubs and people who are managing teams that he's helped out over the last while, and he really immersed himself in the culture of that club. I know when he came to Salt Hill, he wanted to know everything about it. He wanted to figure out what made it tick, the organizational structure. He wanted to know everything about it. And, coming down and, he'd be driving down from Balladreen. He'd be there 2 or 3 hours before. He'd stay down. He went to the socials. Meetings and all that sort of stuff. He really wanted to know how the club worked, so he could actually, try and make it tick in his own way. But his colossal interest in GA, and I've many a conversation on the phone with him, that would start with, can you take a call? And it would then be, sure, look, I won't keep you, and it could go on for an hour, and we talk about everything and anything, work and um, politics and just everything, and even to, the week before last when I was speaking to him, his big interest was early semi-finals, also Knocknacarra versus Uachtarard on Saturday evening, and how would he get to see it, and who was going well, and he was planned to. He still had a keen interest that he was involved. Now he couldn't be involved this year, but he still had that interest in us, and how it was going, and who was turning up and who wasn't, and blah blah blah. So he was forever the boss and forever the manager, and always there to help and always there to take a call. He was just his knowledge over the years, and some of the stories that listening to him, even if we were out for a bite to eat or a drink, is just incredible man to be around, and very caring as well, and very thoughtful, and interested, as Sean Oak said, interested in your family and interested in everything about the person as well as the team.
Is there one moment, Sean, that stands out for you about Jono?
oh, oh there's lots of moments. You know, again, over the last 24 hours, just thinking of all the times we had. I mean, even all the team holidays we went on. We went to, we'll say, Boston, San Diego, Thailand, Canaries, London, South Africa, and you're spending time with people on holidays like that. Just very special memories. Is there any outstanding moment? I'm not sure. Like, there was lots of moments, and I suppose the good thing is that it's been captured on. It's at times like this that Pat Comer's Year Till Sunday is such a treasure. You can see how, and it did, like, that video did give an insight into how he operated. I mean, he never raised his voice. The actual only time I remember him cursing was, and it's caught on video. That quote about the fancy dance, right? So he had that kind of presence in the dressing room, where he had everybody's attention. And then there was the stories about, when he started out with Galway, like, he had to lay down the law to, I mean, some fellas, if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. And, he did meet a fairly, well-known footballer at midnight to train him in Monterey because he was working earlier on in the evening, that kind of thing. But just very charismatic, you know, and even, I suppose, one great skill he had was that, nobody likes getting dropped for the big game, right? And before the team would be announced, Jono would ring the individual and let them know that they weren't going to be playing on Sunday, but would do it in such a way that, he'd start off the phone call, telling the guy that he's in the shape of his life, that he's moving superbly, that that he was really, that kind of, and then he'd tell him, but you're not playing now Sunday, right? But be ready for when you come on, that type of thing. So, he was so good at that it actually eventually became a party piece on nights out. Sometimes, we'd call it the Jono phone call, and you'd have one person on the receiving end, and you'd have one person imitating Jono. And I remember one night we did it, and he was actually present, and he just thought this was hilarious. But just loads of very special memories, and I suppose it would be remiss not to mention his wife,
Of
Geraldine.
course.
I mean, she was part of the story as well. I mean, they were inseparable, and she played her own role in the background, especially I suppose in terms of things like nutrition. She'd ring the hotels ahead that we'd be staying in, telling them what was or what should be on the menu, that type of thing. And I remember one particular time we were at a hotel after some challenge game, and it was boiled vegetables, chicken, and very basic nutritious food, and some fella had the audacity to order chips. So Jono saw them, and they were sent back in fairly quickly. But no, look at lots of very special memories.
Just when you mentioned Fancy Dan's, obviously that video's like going viral, obviously since the sad news emerged yesterday morning. But that's really an iconic moment, isn't it?
It is, yeah, it is. And do I remember it? I suppose I remember it more when I'm looking at the actual video. But I suppose the thing about that, about Pat Comer's show, or the Year Till Sunday, is that it's about an hour long, but there are, I would guess, about 100 hours of tape that Pat has, outside of what was eventually shown to the public. And it would be, he promised us about 20 years ago that he'd send the rest to us. Like, so Pat, if you're listening, maybe it's time maybe to do a Year Till Sunday Mark II. But yeah, that was one of the iconic moments in that film, the Fancy Dans. And it's like that term Fancy Dans has seeped into, because I've seen it written. Some journalists might write articles about whatever, and I've seen that term being used the odd time. So it was Jono that came up with it originally.
You could even see Finian on social media. There was a lot of people thankful for John O'Mahony because John O'Mahony ultimately brought, I suppose, Galway supporters' best days were under him.
Definitely, yeah. And I think it was just, it was so long, I think, Paul, that, 32 years, of a barren spell between an All Ireland. And I think, that when the news broke that John O'Mahony was taking over Galway, and the fact that what he had done in Leitrim, which was, I suppose, absolutely incredible, and getting Mayo so far as well, and he had that reputation really of professionalism. I think there was an air of excitement, particularly with the kind of underage that were coming through, with the likes of Michael Donlan and John Dively and Paor Joyce and these guys as well. So I think at the time there was excitement in the county. Obviously, it wasn't all plain sailing at the start, but you could just see, like, there's fine margins in games, and there's fine margins in winning All Irelands, and you need bits of luck along the way, but you do need someone at the helm that can, there's so many tactics and there's so many things to get right physio wise and all that sort of stuff that comes into play, and that's a huge part of management. But when you've got that X factor that the likes of Jono has, where he can just say something at the right time to make a team really really tick and get over the line down in Castlebar, like the lads did against Mayo, and or get over the line in the Hyde after after replay and after extra time and things like that. You do need that level, that bit of an X factor, and John O'Mahony had it in abundance. He just had that sprinkle of magic dust that he could just put everything together, but then to really really get over the line. It was no mean feat, and what he did and what he created in Galway, and that winning mentality that he, and Seán will obviously be able to allude more to it, but that winning mentality that was there, that never say die, never bet. You saw in 2001, just never bet, against Cork, against Armagh, and I've no doubt that John O'Mahony was a huge part of that. And we saw it in Salt Hill, just some of the conversations. He was just able to really get the best out of lads and make, lads who maybe weren't as prominent on a team just feel like they were midfield and captain. He was a brilliant speaker and a brilliant motivator.
It's not often, Finian, being from Galway, we adore Mayo men. It's safe to say, but we nearly seen him as a Galway man.
I think so, yeah, and kind of really getting to know him over the last couple of years. You could always see that, he'd always kind of say it as well. He'd be very much, look, his loyalties are divided. He'd always say, which was I suppose unusual for Mayo people in Galway, or Galway people in Mayo. But he'd very much be, Galway was in his heart, and the fact that obviously players that he's managed. And up to last week or 2 weeks ago, he was so thrilled for the Salt and Knocknacara guys that were playing, and the John Mahers of this world. Like, he was really really proud of that, because he felt he had a handle in those guys and their progression, which he did massively. And he was always he always went to Galway and Mayo matches, he said, with a bit torn, to be honest, which is unusual. So like, Galway was very very much in his heart, and obviously the memories and the memories that he and his wife Ger have here, and over the years, and obviously the best times of his managerial career were in Galway as well. So he spent a lot of time here over the last, as he said himself, 10 or 15 years, and it was just his. He loved it. He loved Galway as well as loving Mayo, and he gave as much as he could to both counties, which is a remarkable achievement.
Seán Óga, I remember asking him before the Connacht final, who does he want to win, Galway or Mayo, and his response was, "I can't lose."
Yeah, like I'd often, slag him about the fact that he was from Mayo, and obviously in good, but he always kept his cards close to his chest when that subject was broached. But like, I'd always feel, I know he's from Mayo, but I'd always feel that he was ours. That, like, I never used to think of him as because he was so loyal to us. I think I said that a bit earlier, that you could, but then I suppose you asked the Leitrim lads. I mean, if you had Leitrim lads on here now, that 94 victory that they had in Connacht, they're just as gutted and heartbroken as we are in Galway. So they would feel that he belongs to them, and we likewise. And obviously, he was a proud Mayo man. I mean, he was on their under-21 team that won an All-Ireland in '74. He brought them to the All-Ireland final as manager in '89. So, but you could never get a straight answer from him when that subject was broached as to where really did his heart lie, right? And but I do know that he was very, very proud of his Galway connections and his Galway achievements, and like I said earlier, I'd always chat to him maybe a week out from a Galway Mayo match. What are your thoughts and that kind of thing? And I'm sure sure, he was probably ringing loads of people, like, but just a wonderful man. Like he, he was a religious man as well. I know I'm kind of going off topic here, but I remember part of, we'll say, our match day schedule, if you like, right, was a mass in a hotel in Dublin. We used to have a priest from I think it was Caltra, Father Kit, used to come in and say mass to us. Now it was voluntary to go, but everybody went. It wasn't kind of you have to go to mass like a team meeting, but everybody went, and that was at Jono's instigation. He organized it. And like he just had that serenity about him. That he carried into a dressing room where he didn't have to raise his voice. He didn't have to, use bad language or that type of thing. He was also, very, very meticulous. We'd say 8 days out from a championship match, we would play an A versus B, we'd call it, right? And the B team would always wear the opposition that we were playing in 8 days' time, their colours, just to bring that level of professionalism to it. I remember 2 weeks before we played Kildare in the All-Ireland final, we did a dry run. Offaly were playing in the hurling final. Do you remember the final where Brian Whelan got up out of his sickbed and he won the game for them? So we went up to Croke Park 2 weeks before our own final. We stayed in the same hotel. We stayed in the same bedrooms. We had the same, guy that would be in the room with you, staying with you 2 weeks out. We trained. Well, obviously, we couldn't train at 3 o'clock because we were in Croke Park watching the game. But just that level of detail. Also, I was lucky enough to be in his house in Balladreen, Tower House, and he has hundreds of videos. He had them stacked, like a kind of a. Do you remember Extravision years ago? Used to have hundreds of videos in there. Well, he had his own, all games that he had videoed, and he had done analysis on opposition, that type of thing. There was other things as well that just showed how like he was able to treat players differently. Like he knew, like, to get the best out of them. I mean, you can't have a uniform approach. I remember, I'll admit it, like, sometimes we'd say myself, right, maybe 2 weeks out from a match, you'd be doubting yourself sometimes. You'd be kind of there, geez, I'm not going well, my form isn't great, right? And he'd tell me, he told me once or twice, about 2 weeks out from the whatever big match we're playing, Shanogi says, you'll be starting in 2 weeks' time, right? So just, forget about everything, don't be worried about that, that type of thing. And then other fellas then, I remember, he shall remain nameless, but one fella wasn't picked for a particular game, and the message went out that he was injured, but he wasn't injured, right? But it never got out. But the same gentleman had to stand up in the dressing room in front of everybody the following week and to apologize for his, whatever he got up to. But it was just the way he was able to treat people. He was able to treat players differently, and I suppose, and Finian knows this because he's the manager of Salthill now, right? And there's lots of aspects to managing a team, but I think the most difficult part, and it sounds the easiest part, but it's to get everybody singing off the same hymn sheet and to make everybody feel valued. You have your first 15, it's easy to keep them happy. You then have your next 15, right? Your subs and your extended panel. You then have your backroom team, and it's to make every single one of them feel that they're valued and that they have a role. And he was brilliant at that. He just made everybody feel, I have an important role to play here, right? And that was another word that he was, your role. That was a big thing with him. And that extended to everybody from number 1 all the way to 50. So, just a man ahead of his time.
That was the thing, Finian, like reference back then, it would have been referenced that Jono back then was ahead of the curve where intercounty football was at management wise, and even as Sean Oakes talking there about his attention to detail.
Yeah, and Sean Oak made, I suppose, a very good point, very relevant point, and kind of hit the nail on the head really with regards to Jono. It's making everyone tick. If he had a panel of 100, Jono would be able to try. He'd do a really good job of keeping everyone happy. I remember when I first came across Jono, I was a minor in 2003, I think it was, and he was the under-21 manager and obviously the senior manager, and he had brought one or two of us in for an under-21 challenge down in Crushing, I think it was, in Clare against Kerry. Anyway, I ended up cracking a rib or two ribs or something, but I had to go straight to A&E. So Tommy Kelly, the great Tommy Kelly, had me in the back of the car to A&E. And obviously, he was picking panels and stuff, and I didn't know John O'Mahony. John O'Mahony didn't know me, and a lot of guys, was still picking the panel. But he arrived up to A&E then to see what the story was. Do you know what I mean? And I was kind of, you feel 50 feet tall when John O'Mahony arrives in to see you all right. You know what I mean? And you're a young guy, and you're knocking in around with the manager of a guy who's managed 2 All-Irelands, and he was just a cult hero at the time. So like that was really to me, that was kind of the epitome of him, the way he was able to just say, well, it's Finian Hanley, or it doesn't matter who it is, who's only new in or not even on the panel yet, but I care. And then he rang the next day and things like that, so he was very, very much able to do that, to just get guys. He used to say, and over the last couple of years, one thing I really took from him was we need everybody. That was his because I suppose in management and in clubs and in counties, a lot of the time we say, sure, look, we have the 20 lads or the 21 lads, and you might hear that he won't make it, or and that creeps in around the place. But Jono would not hear of any of that. He was very much, if number 30 or number 2, we need everybody because injuries will come and form will dip and all that sort of stuff. He was a real man for the full panel, and the kit man was as important as everyone was really important to the group. And once you were signed into that group, you were part of it. And that was his mantra. And I think it was a testament to the man he was, that he was able to, nobody really, there was always fallings out along the way, but nobody has a huge bad word. I haven't heard too many bad words about John O'Mahony, which is unusual given his career.
With that,
I'll interrupt there. Sorry, no. Just another couple of things that have come into my head in terms of his meticulousness. Tommy Gorman, who was a very good friend of Jono's, we'd say these, I call them feel good videos for us, and he'd always play them on the Saturday. We'd say the day before whatever match we'd have on a Sunday. It was all the good stuff that we had done in the whatever couple of matches, and it would make you feel 10 foot tall, when the video might only be 8-9 minutes long, but they were so inspirational. And Tommy Gorman was obviously a big name, so you were there, how the hell does he know this lad? But then on top of that, and this was the first time that I'd say a lot of the lads were exposed to this, we used to have these meetings where we would be broken up into groups, and he would get a facilitator in, a guy that would pose maybe 5 or 6 questions. They were, I suppose, hard-hitting questions, and each group would have to come up with, answers. Things like, a question could be something along the lines of, how did you think the team performed the last day, or where did the team perform well the last day? And it meant that we were all getting a say, and it wasn't just him, preaching from the pulpit, that type of thing. So that was a kind of a new approach that, that I hadn't seen up to then, where the players were given a voice, and he was very, just again ahead of the curve. Lots of teams do that now anyways, but just, so apologies for interrupting there. I just said
It's a good
Give a
story.
couple of more examples. Yeah.
I was just going to say, Finian, Jono obviously came to Salt Hill. How did you get involved with him? Because that's obviously where you would have been, came close with him over the last few years.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, John. I suppose when I first heard that John O'Mahony was thinking or had been approached, I didn't actually know anything about it. I was finishing 20 years of playing with Salt Hill, and I had no intention of doing anything. I was having the chat at home. It was time for a year off and whatnot. But and he had started putting together a management team of Sean Armstrong and Norman Costello and things like that. But I got maybe I had said that definitely I was done playing anyhow, and getting involved wasn't. I was going to take a bit of time off, but he rang the phone one day anyhow, and I hadn't spoke to him in a while. And we had a bit of a chat, and he said, "Look, I'm looking at helping out down here, and what's your position on playing, or what's your position on being involved?" And I said, "Look, Jesus, John, I certainly won't be playing anyhow. But being involved is something I haven't thought about in the short term or whatever." And so, he's a very good way of hoodwinking you into a corner, and then all of a sudden, he'd tell you, okay, sure, look, think about it, and I'll see you Tuesday night, kind of a job. So that was that was his way. And then the phone call the following day, and then a text message. Can I give him a call? I said, this guy is seriously persistent now about whatever he wants to do. So, long story short, I met him then, and I suppose, look, when you meet, as I said before, when you meet John O'Mahony and he wants you to help out, and it's your own club as well, there's too much there to turn down, because the experience of working with a guy like that, they don't come along too often. So I suppose I said I'd help out, and it was a brilliant couple of years with John, and even up to this year. His health wasn't the best, but he still wanted to come back down and help out in any way he could. So we had given the commitment we would stay on, because he wanted us to stay on, and he wanted us to try and finish the job that he started, or whatever it is. That's the kind of way he put it. But he was brilliant to work with, and as I said, you'd get 2 or 3 phone calls a day, and you'd be talking to him 6, 7, 8 times a week, and just insightful, and everything had a story, and he'd so many different stories and so many ways of looking at the game and things like that. So it was a privilege to be involved with him. He gave everyone autonomy as well. As Sean Oak said, he was ahead of his time. He had he wanted to get the lads into seeing the professional side of the game that maybe they hadn't seen before, with regards to preparation and trainers and meetings and all, and video analysis and all that sort of stuff. So, he let the trainers train and do video analysis and all that. And then he just had a very good knack, as Sean Oak said, of, saying in a meeting, saying the right words at the right time, and not overkilling or doing anything like that. But his dedication to it was amazing, really. He driving up and down from Balladreen and being there early, and just his commitment, and I think immersing himself in the culture of whatever team. And I'd heard this before anyway, about clubs he was involved, that he really, really, really got involved in the club, and as I said, he'd be very well remembered in Salt and Knocknacar.
Yeah, you obviously are gone into the manager role now, been in with Salt Knocknacar, but I presume, as you mentioned there, you've learned a huge amount from him.
For sure, yeah, for sure. As I said, it was a mutual kind of agreement between us all that if the club would allow, we would stay on. Obviously, we met John over Christmas. We all had dinner, the 4 of us. It was lovely, actually. We dinner in Salt Hill, myself and Sean Armstrong, Norma Costo, and Jono. And obviously, he was talking about his own kind of situation of the 2 years and the travel and everything like that. So, he didn't want to let it go, but he felt maybe now was the time. But he only wanted the management team to stay on, and that's really what he was kind of playing for. And he was always going to be in the background, and able to advise us on anything we needed going forward. So that was the decision that was made, and we spent 2.5 hours in Salt Hill just chatting, and him giving advice, and without giving advice, he was giving advice. Do you know what I mean? He was very meticulous on roll calls and who was at training. And as Sean Oak said, he would wait and train a guy at whatever time, just to make sure that he was ahead of everyone. That if someone said, I can't make it tomorrow, he'd be there the next day, or if I can't make it the next day, he would be there. He didn't care. He said, if I have to sleep up here for a week, I don't care. I'll be there to meet the guys. So, sometimes you kind of go at the time, you go, Jesus, are we meeting a lot? Or are we doing, everyone questions management, but Jono's, I suppose he changed the mindset in Salt Hill of a bit more professionalism that wasn't particularly there in the past, and the level of commitment that's needed to be successful. And Salt Hill haven't been successful, and hopefully they will in the next couple of years. But he really changed the mindset, and working with him and listening to him. And I just think it was a nice moment that, I suppose we're really staying on for ourselves, but staying on for him as well, because that's what he wanted.
There is a question here, Sean, that came in for you about Jono. Obviously you won the All Ireland in '98, but you suffered heartbreak in 2000. But then you get back in 2001. How did he get you back?
Again, okay, so we were beaten after replay by Kerry in, I think it was October 2000, and then, like I mentioned earlier, all the places that we'd gone on holidays, but it was New Year's Day 2001. We went to South Africa, which, and I think every all well, no, I think there was one or two, but most of the players were there, and we had a great holiday. And we had a great holiday in the sense that, we enjoyed each other's company. We had a good few nights out, played a bit of golf, you know, all of that kind of stuff. And it was just a recharging of the batteries. Now, if memory serves me, I think, Jono let us do all of that, but then I think the night before, we went back, we flew back home. We had, I think, our first and only team meeting of the holiday, where, if you like, we had a renewal of vows. And and he'd often say this to us. And it does give you, he'd say, I'm looking around the dressing room here, and there's no other dressing room in the country with as much talent as what's sitting in here right now. I mean, that's very powerful when you hear that from a man that, that you have a huge amount of respect for, and that, doesn't tell lies. So I would say that holiday to South Africa had a part to play. And also, I suppose, the 2001. Now, the 2001 season was very, it was very hairy for a while. There was, we obviously got beaten by Roscommon in a Connacht semi-final, and it was the first year of the backdoor. And I do remember again. I'm not sure whether he said it in the dressing room after we were beaten by Roscommon, but he said, if there's anybody interested in continuing on in this championship, we'll have training Wednesday week. So he kind of left the door open for anybody that wasn't willing to, recommit, if you like, to the back door, that they could walk off into the sunset. He just wanted, everybody who was 110% committed for the next phase of the championship. So, we were a bit lucky, I think, to be honest, because you'd be fragile enough confidence-wise after being beaten in the championship. I'm not saying it was easy to go down to Wicklow and beat them, but it wasn't one of the harder draws. And we just took it from there. Some of the best days in terms of crack, was we'd go up to Dublin, we'd play Cork, we'd play Armagh, Croke Park, whatever. And then we'd go on the train, and we'd have two carriages for ourselves. There'd be a meal laid on, but equally there'd be refreshments, let's call it that, right? Laid on by, Jono laid on by the county board with Jono's blessing, and the fostering of the team spirit and all that on the train down was just superb. So, he just managed it so well. And, I suppose, we won it then at the end of 2001. But like all teams that win things, you have regrets. You feel you should have won more. I suppose 2003 would have been, you know, it's easy to say it like, but I reckon if we got to a semi-final against Armagh, we, you know, might have brought us to bigger levels. But anyways, look at, you can't win them all.
Is there any moment with him that stands out for you, Finian?
Yeah. Look, I suppose over the last couple of years, I suppose I've got to know him quite well, and I just think there's so many stories about John O'Mahony over the last. It feels like everyone feels like they know John O'Mahony in Galway. I think he's just a part of everyone's. Even the non-GA people or the non-football people will know who John O'Mahony is, and people might have never seen a football match in their lives. Do you know what I mean? So, like, he's just known far and wide. His competitive nature was it was off the charts. He was just so competitive, and I was talking earlier about he was the manager of the Railway Cup in 2006. We went to Boston. We lost the final last kick of the game to Leinster, and that one hurt him bad. It did, and I suppose, young at the time, and it was great. And Savo and there was a crew of us Galway lads were on the team or whatever it was, but it was I said, Jesus, after I said, geez, he's not, like, when you're playing a game and it's abroad, and obviously Galway hadn't won a Railway Cup in God knows how long. And it was one he really, really, really wanted to win. He was so disappointed after. Jesus, I was in the dressing room saying, "Geez, the boss isn't happy here at all now." And he was kind of came for a drink, but that was kind of it. After he'd be thinking about that, even though it mightn't have been his biggest game, but it was one he really wanted to win. His competitive nature in the dressing room and beyond was just, and after we lost, Salt Hill lost 2 years ago as well. It was the same. It was just he'd hurt bad after wins. He'd get over it, but he just had that. He wanted to win, and that's a skill in itself, because to mix that with obviously trying to get back on the horse and things like that as well. I just think he had a huge competitive hunger, and he was a winner in any sense of it. If it was a league match or if it was a championship match, he'd be super disappointed when he lost, and I think that was the kind of standout attribute that I witnessed over the years with him, that he just had that insatiable hunger for success.
Do you think it's just now because he's passed away, Finian, that people are only talking about him now as being one of the greatest managers of all time? Because when we've talked about Leitrim and Galway and Mayo, like, no manager is going to do what he did with three counties.
It's a good question, Paul. I always wonder that myself. I suppose my own opinion, and I'm not sure. I don't think Sean will disagree, that he is one of the greatest sporting managers. Sporting, I say, I'm talking all sports in Ireland, from what he has done with different counties. To get Mayo weren't far away in '89. To go to Leitrim and win a Connacht title, he didn't. No disrespect to New York or or London or anything. He bet Galway, Roscommon, and Mayo with Leitrim to win a Connacht championship. Now that is that would be a big, big, big thing to do now. But back then it was off the charts, that success, and then obviously to come into Galway, and after Mayo been dominant for 2 years and getting to All Ireland finals, to make Galway people believe. I really think that, and I suppose I'm more disappointed yesterday that Salt Hill didn't get over the line 2 years ago. They were so close, and he really wanted to win that, and I just think that would have been a lovely gloss on his career with regards to the club game, because he got so close to that. But I think people will remember John O'Mahony in the same way they'll remember Sean Boylan and Mick O'Dwyer, and all these people. All over the country, people know. I'm getting text messages this morning from people in Dublin and Kerry, just the respect they had for the man. And I think, I'm hoping that people will remember John O'Mahony as one of the greatest GA men, but one of the greatest managers that the country has seen. I think they do, and anyone that knows sport will know what he has done. And some people mightn't hear it, but when they do hear it, they'll go, "Yeah, that's a good enough CV to be up there with the greats."
Sure, you agree with everything said there, Sean Oak?
100%. Yeah, his legacy. He's left a really, really um, brilliant legacy behind him. Um, I mean, we haven't even touched on what he did outside of sport. I mean, he was a teacher, he was a senator, he was a TD, and
I think he had
yesterday,
every role too with Ballahadreen that was
uh,
possible.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Like I was reading yesterday, he won county titles with Balladureen as well. But look at like the all the tributes that have been flowing in from distinguished people like our Taoiseach, Ir Taoiseach, the President of Ireland. I mean, that says it all, doesn't it? But I think, you know, apart from all the success that he had, as a sports person, as a politician, and all of that, I think what people will remember most about him was that he was a very, very, very decent human being, and he was a gentleman, and like that, that for me is my um when I think of John O'Mahony, that's what I think of. Yes, he was competitive. Yes, he was meticulous. Yes, he was, superb presence and all that. Like, but just a nice guy. So, we'll all miss him. So we will.
Just as well, because it's something we haven't mentioned. I know anytime Finian came on the podcast and there was a Galway match on, he'd talk so fondly about the Salthill players in particular. Obviously, he worked with them closely. I know John Maher did an interview last year, and when he wasn't involved in 22 and he got back involved then with Galway, like he put a lot of that down to Jono. Like he's had a massive influence on those younger players, and he was only there for such a short space of time.
Yeah, he did, and that was the knack that he had. That, as I said earlier on, that he immersed himself in, and he wanted to. He saw, and up to last week or the week before when I was talking to him, it was all about, he was watching the matches, but watching with a keen eye on the John Mahers and the Tom O'Cullahans and the Robert Finnertys of this world. He felt like that year we had in 22 was a catalyst for these guys to push on and make them believe that John Maher wasn't in the panel in 22, and now he's all-star material this year. And making them believe that yes, you are good enough to do this, you are good enough to play, and you can mix it with anyone, and that's one thing you'd hear him having these conversations, and he'd come back and he'd say, "What did you say to him there, John?" Or what? He'd be like, "I just told him he's as good as what's in the country, not in the county, what's in the country," and obviously that resonates with players, particularly when it comes to someone like that. But the players in Salt Hill, Knocknacarra, knew what what they were getting when Jono came in. They'd the younger guys mightn't have known his checkered history, but they had known that this guy was special or whatever it is. And obviously he moved. As he got older, he had to change bits and pieces to his managerial style, but he did that, and he was able to find what was in vogue at that particular time, and make it relevant to kids, because obviously John has been involved in the game for so long that there's 19-year-olds now, and there's Twitter and there's TikTok, and there's a lot of psychology needed, and he always used that word psychology. He was like, these guys need to be you know focused in, and there's a lot of distractions now with younger players in sports. So he was very cognizant of that element of modern society, that young guys, they like to go away, and they like to, come. It's a come day go day. He would call some at some stages of the year, but he was very well able to kind of make it relevant to young people now, because it's obviously the world has changed since '98 and 2001, where commitment mightn't be there, but he was able to get the best out of them, and that's a testament to the way the man moved throughout the times. But look, over the last while, and the conversations, and Sean O made the point there just about how kind he was, and how very kind to everyone, and very, he was a gentle soul, really. And some of the conversations, he might ring me at 9 o'clock in the morning to say, "Did you read the paper? there could be something on that we might have been talking about in politics or something. And he goes, I'll send it on to you. And then he'd send me a book, or he gave me books to read about different things and to do with work and all that sort of stuff. So he had a keen interest in all facets of life, not just sport. And I agree with Sean. He'd be a sorely missed person in this island.
He had a massive influence, obviously, on Porrick and John Divley as well, who are obviously involved with the Galway senior footballers. Sean Hogan, it's obviously going to be difficult too for them this week.
Yeah, it will. But wouldn't it be no? Wouldn't it be a fitting tribute if they did, perform on Sunday and beat Donegal? But look at, that's. I know Porrick. I know he's heartbroken. He would have. I would. My guess is he would be in contact no more than with Finian there, with John or the rest of us, on a fairly regular basis, and possibly Jono would have been maybe at times a sounding board for him, with Porrick in his present role, Divo as well. Um, you know, just look at it's yeah, they'll be thinking obviously about him this week, and I suppose if they could maybe channel some of what John O'Mahony had as a manager and as a person into their preparations this week for the match against Donegal, and it would be great. It really would, and like I said, like it would be, you know, it would be a fitting tribute to him if we did manage to qualify for an All Ireland final. But it'll be a very difficult game against a very well prepared Donegal team. We know that, but um, it'll be great.
Absolutely. That's all we do have time for today on today's podcast. But before we do finish, obviously, condolences to all the O'Mahony family and anyone related or connected to John O'Mahony. He was obviously the best Galway senior football manager of all time, and may he rest in peace.